If you want to ruin your fantasy football draft before the season even starts, the players in this video will do just that. Today we are going round by round, breaking down 10 players who are going way too early, and it's a mistake where they're being drafted because of their situation, role, and upside. Now let's get into it. We have to start, of course, in round one, and let me just get this out of the way right now. You're seeing a bunch of round one players on the screen: CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Puka Nacua. Nobody in round one is necessarily a tank pick. Like, if you pick that player, you're going to lose your league. But by definition, if there is going to be a best player in each round, or a handful of guys who look like the best, there's also going to be guys in each round, including round one, who don't look as good. And one of those players who I'm going to be calling out here is the 9th overall pick as of right now in fantasy drafts, is Malik Nabers, who, look, this guy was electric last season. If you look at the numbers he put up, it was a historic rookie year. The most receptions ever by a rookie wide receiver with 109, the second most ever by a rookie in general, only behind Brock Bowers. 170 targets is insane, 1,200 receiving yards. I mean, he was going out there and he was producing like a first round fantasy receiver that he was, and dominating, looking better than Marvin Harrison, looking better or equally as good as Brian Thomas. He was doing it with bad quarterback play as well. But now that quarterback play of Tommy DeVito and Daniel Jones and Drew Lock and all these guys is gone, and it's been upgraded. Now, not like anything significant, but Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, some veteran presence, a first round pick that the Giants traded up for, so they believe in, and Jackson Dart as well. So there's no doubt about it that the baseline and maybe even the ceiling at the quarterback position has improved this year, but it's not like it's gone from being a bottom 5 quarterback room to a top 5 room. It's probably not even going to be an average quarterback room. It still looks like a below average unit. But I will grant you that last year this team ranked bottom 3 in yards per play, and there's a decent chance that they could at least increase that to bottom 10, which should lift up the whole offense's efficiency, including Malik Nabers. But my worry is that this offensive line, like, if you're having Russell Wilson back there and even a rookie in Jackson Dart, like, the offensive line has to be good. And right now, Russell Wilson, the reason why is because he's not as mobile anymore. They ranked 28th in the NFL last year. There were some injuries there. They were giving up a pressure on 38% of their quarterback dropbacks, which led to them ranking 31st in the NFL, averaging just 6 yards per play. Like, that's not good at all. But my concern is, like, what have they done this year to improve that? If we look at the team changes tracker in the fantasy blueprint, you can check it out down below at jointheblueprint.com. By the way, the prices do increase significantly on August 1st. You can see right here, of course, in the NFL draft, on offense, they targeted Jackson Dart in the first round. A lot of people who follow fantasy or college football know that Cam Scatterbo was drafted by the Giants, but there was no offensive lineman taken here. Okay, now let's go ahead and look at what they did in free agency. They added a right tackle in James Hudson. Okay, not really anything crazy. They added a depth tackle in Stone Forthsmith. Not really anything crazy either. So we're basically running it back this season with, of course, a healthier offensive line compared to where it was at the end of last year. But again, like, it was a bottom 2 or bottom 3 unit overall. And then you could also factor in that this might be one of the coaching staffs that's on the hot seat the most. Like, if the Giants end up starting out and they don't have an easy schedule as like a 1-5 or a 1-6 team, we might see a new coaching staff come in which midseason coaching staffs sometimes give a team a little bit of a bump, but overall it's not great. It's not like what you spent all offseason preparing for. So again, Malik Nabers is extremely talented. The guy earned like a 35% target share. His target rate was elite last year. He was one of the best wide receivers at earning targets in the league because he had no competition. And heading into this year, he basically still has no competition because they just re-signed Darius Slayton. Wan'Dale Robinson is still there. Theo Johnson, the tight end who was a rookie last year, comes back from an injury. But when I compare Malik Nabers to Puka Nacua, who goes after, and Christian McCaffrey, I like those guys more. When I compare him to Amon-Ra St. Brown and CeeDee Lamb at the position to go before him, I like those guys more. Whether it's their quarterback situation or overall offense or the years that they've been proving it, I just like the upside there. I don't think there's as much risk. So in terms of the worst pick, and again, there's really not a worst pick in the first round, but here we're going to have to go with Malik Nabers. And now as I enter round 2, I'm looking at another player who was a rookie last year coming into his second year. We just mentioned him briefly, and I'm looking at Brock Bowers, who goes in kind of the early parts of the second round, the 16th overall pick. The tight end was incredible in 2024. I mean, he had the most tight end catches by a rookie ever. He had the most catches by a rookie in general ever. He led the position with 153 targets. He was one of just 6 players in the NFL last year to have over 150 targets, and he was the only tight end to do so. A 25.9% target share is absolutely elite for this position. He had over 1,100 receiving yards, but none of that is the problem. We know that this guy can produce. The problem is where he currently goes in drafts, because if we pull it up right now, you're getting Brock Bowers going in the second round as the 16th overall pick, which means he's going right next to guys like Nico Collins and Brian Thomas, which is just insane. If you scroll down, you can see that he's going ahead ahead of Drake London, a player who has the potential to finish as a top 5 overall player this year. That's his upside. Similar things can be said for A.J. Brown if that team throws a little bit more. Stud running backs and Jonathan Taylor and Bucky Irving. Like, I just don't think I want to be taking, especially picks before. We're talking like Ladd McConkey going 10 picks later compared to one Brock Bowers. Because he's already done more than 99% of tight ends will ever do in their career. He did that in his rookie year, and now he heads into an offense this year that doesn't look as good set up for him to succeed as last year. Like, don't get me wrong, there's some clear advantages like Geno Smith coming in from this offense, but this tweet just stands out for me from Ian Hartitz. Brock Bowers scored 31.8 more points per game last year than the next closest top 12 tight end in fantasy in the fourth quarter. So what does this mean? It means that he was just dominating in the fourth quarter. He was scoring more than 2 more fantasy points per game than any other top 12 tight end in the fourth quarter alone, because the Raiders were trailing, they were having to throw a lot to play from ahead, and he really didn't have any other competition besides Jakobi Meyers. But if we had to nitpick Brock Bowers, now there's going to be a little bit more competition. And sure, it's coming in the form of rookies, right? You have these 2 rookie wide receivers in Deontay Thornton who look good in OTAs, Jack Bech, a second-round pick. In my opinion, at least one of these, if not both of them, is going to be better than Trey Tucker and DJ Turner, who's not even on the team. Those were the guys that were competing with Jakobi Meyers last year. So there's a little bit more competition there. Obviously, the biggest piece here is going to be Ashton Jeanty, who can definitely catch passes, especially in the short to intermediate parts of the field where Brock Bowers was often used, and the fact that this team now has a new coaching staff. That coaching staff is going to be led by Pete Carroll, who wants to run the ball, who said he wanted to run the ball. The organization backed that up by going out and drafting Ashton Jeanty with a top 10 overall pick when they could have definitely used other positions. They have Chip Kelly coming in as the offensive coordinator, somebody who can get creative in the ways that he uses his personnel, which is what I'm thinking with Ashton Jeanty in the pass catching game. Some of these new rookie wide receivers, especially Thornton, who has speed, Jack Bech, who can move into the slot and out wide. There's just more personnel here and a shift in philosophy to run the ball more, which means maybe less overall potential targets for Bowers. And the defense should be much improved this season, healthier with Kuhnson, and obviously you still have Crosby there, Wilkins. Like, this should be a solid unit, so maybe they're not going to be trailing as much in games, which allows them to run the ball even more. There's also the opportunity cost at the tight end position. Like, Brock Bowers goes 16th overall, Trey McBride goes 10 picks later, George Kittle's going 20 to 30 picks later, depending on the format that you're playing in. So as of right now, compared to the players around him, I do believe that Brock Bowers is the worst pick in the second round, especially if you're starting your draft off with, let's just say, an elite running back. If you're getting a guy, or maybe even CeeDee Lamb, and then you come around and you get Brock Bowers, now you're really stretched thin at trying to get your wide receiver 2 in round 4, assuming you go running back in round 3. It's starting to get a little bit thin there. Now, when we get to round 3, the worst player that I'm seeing here, and he goes at the end of round 3 right now, is Marvin Harrison, who, let's be clear on this one, Marvin Harrison is a solid, if not a highly talented wide receiver, especially compared to me and anybody else not in the NFL, but the ways the Cardinals used him last year were just not great. Because in 2024, Marvin Harrison in his rookie year, where he was going as a borderline first-round pick, at worst a second-round pick in fantasy, all he did was finish as the wide receiver 39, which is pretty crazy when you considered he actually scored 8 touchdowns as a rookie, which is pretty solid, and he's still only ranked as a wide receiver 4 in fantasy. Outside the top 36 wide receivers, this was despite him earning 116 targets. He had 885 receiving yards, but the problem was he was basically the wide receiver 2 on his team because tight end Trey McBride was there. Now, you could argue that he was being misused, Marvin Harrison, during his entire rookie season by the coaching staff, and if you watch the film week in and week out, it kind of seems like that. He was being used as like this downfield field stretcher when he's known more so for his routes run and ability to get open in the short to intermediate parts. I think this tweet by Adam Pfeiffer kind of makes that a little bit easier to kind of see. You can see here, Marvin Harrison ranked 5th in tight coverage targets last year. Not great. In terms of go routes, he ranked 6th. Marvin Harrison, if you know what go routes are, it means just go, just run. He was never known for his speed or winning on go routes. That's why he didn't run the 40 time, because it probably would have hurt his draft stock. So he's seeing all these types of snaps. Pre-snap motion targets, the dude had just 1 pre-snap motion target last year. Terrible. Deep targets, he ranked 6th, which normally we like those, but for the way that he was being used, not great at all. So like, this is a problem. The way Marvin Harrison was being used was no creativity pre-snap motion, lined up on the outside and just run a go route for plenty of the season. Like, that's not using your first round top 10 overall pick skill set. But the hope would be that since he still has the same competition coming into this year, with Michael Thomas being the main wide receiver competition, Trey McBride obviously the top overall competition, they still have the same coaching staff here. The hope would be that maybe they change a couple of things after seeing a whole whole offseason of that not working for Marvin Harrison Jr., but that's like not a guarantee. And when we're looking at the players that he currently goes around in fantasy drafts, it doesn't make you feel all that great when he's currently going around guys like Terry McLaurin are going right around that same spot. He's going ahead of guys like Davante Adams. Like, we can just stop it right there. Give me Davante Adams 10 out of 10 times over Marvin Harrison. Mike Evans, I don't really like the 32-year-old wide receiver profiles that both of these guys are, but I'll just take them. They're still producing. They're still looking great on an efficiency standpoint. Across different positions, Kenneth Walker. Definitely I want Rashee Rice over Marvin Harrison, especially at a cheaper price point. So that's the part that just gets a little bit tough for me to look at, especially when we consider that this team might be even more run heavy this year because they finally invested in their defense, so they'll probably be in closer games, at least on paper. Here's what they did to their defense just in the draft alone. In the first round, they get Walter Nolan, a defensive tackle. They get Will Johnson, who was considered a steal by many teams, dropped for some medical reasons, a cornerback in the second round, and then a bunch of other great options. All 7 of these picks, or 6 out of 7 of their picks outside of a late round offensive lineman, were on the defense. But that's not even factoring in that they also went out there and they added Josh Sweat in free agency to this defensive line, so that's awesome. Their cornerback room now looks like maybe one of the best units very quietly in the entire NFL. So if your defense is finally better, it means you could stay in closer games and run the ball more. And they do have the horses to do so. We've seen James Conner, all he does with the Cardinals is put up 1,000 yards and finish as a top 15 fantasy back. He could also catch passes. Trey Benson entering year 2. We're hoping that the talent that many people thought he was the best running back in last year's draft class, we can finally see that come through with another offseason and another year to develop behind James Conner. So as of right now, when Courtland Sutton is going ahead of guys like our next two, Davante Adams, Terry McLaurin, Ted McMillan, heck, even Courtland Sutton's going like 10 picks later, I would just rather have those guys. I think Marvin Harrison, I believe, is the worst pick right now in the 3rd round. Now, if you want to see exactly where my top 50 players are ranked overall in these rounds of the draft, I just updated my top 50 rankings. It's linked down below, completely free for you. It includes tiers and it shows you the best and worst picks in each round of your draft. All you have to do is click the link in the description below. You'll pop up this page right here. You just enter your email and I'll send you those top 50 overall rankings that were just updated, or you can head to fantasyrankingsfree.com. You just type in fantasyrankingsfree.com. And if you want to take it to the next level and get my full top 250 for your draft, all my other draft tools, my in-season tools, and one-on-one access to ask me questions in the exclusive Discord, you can check out the blueprint that's released right now. 10,000 people are currently using it to help them dominate their leagues. It's the tools that I use in every single one of my leagues as well. To get access to the blueprint that'll help you smack around your friends this year, get all the bragging rights you want every single week of the season, and win your league ultimately, you can check it out at jointheblueprint.com. That's jointheblueprint.com. It's also linked down below. Now we get to round 4, and I think this is where I'm going to start to get some heat. And by the way, I know I'm already going to get the comments anytime you make like a worst picks or players to avoid. Everybody gets their panties in a bunch because they're like, that player is so good. Yes, I know all these players in the NFL are good. We're talking about them relative to the other players being drafted around them, which is why in round 4, Joe Burrow is the absolute worst pick that you could possibly make. And right now he's starting to go to the beginning and the earlier parts of the draft, like late round 3, which is just crazy. And I get it. Last year he's coming off of a historic season where he led the NFL in passing yards, one of the best seasons ever. Led the NFL in downfield passing. You keep scrolling. He basically did everything last year. Money throws, pressured throws. This guy was absolutely dynamite. Pass attempts. Let's scroll up even more. 43 touchdowns led the NFL. He finished as a quarterback 3, his best finish in fantasy, 22.5 fantasy points per game. All of this is fantastic. So why are we avoiding Joe Burrow? For a couple of reasons. First off, there's regression. Are we really expecting a 5,000 yard, 43 touchdown season? And the second reason, the dude doesn't run. And when you're talking about fantasy football, it kind of stinks if your quarterback's getting 11 rushing yards per game outside the top 32 quarterbacks and had just 2 rushing touchdowns last year. Like, we're not getting any upside on the ground. So let's just say there is some regression. Just some regression for a talented player still in a talented, loaded offense. Let's say instead of throwing for 5,000 yards, he throws for 4,400. Instead of 43 touchdowns, they run a couple more in and he has 36. Quickly now, he's finishing outside the top 5, 6, or 7 quarterbacks where he's currently going drafted ahead of that. And only 2 quarterbacks over the past 12 years have finished back-to-back seasons top 3 in passing touchdowns. Those guys were Tom Brady and Russell Wilson. So their odds are, we're talking 10 out of the last 12 years, those quarterbacks don't repeat. So now if Burrow goes from number 1 to outside of the top 3, he's quickly sliding down the overall rankings, but he's not being drafted like that in terms of regression. And at the end of the day, at the quarterback position, like, let's just keep scrolling here. Jalen Hurts is going picks after him, but let's scroll even more because there's some crazy quarterbacks who are going so far. We can slide past Patrick Mahomes if you want to. I want to talk about some of these guys in this range. You're talking about Bo Nix going 35 picks later, even though he was a top 10 quarterback last year, and now he's going into year 2 of his offense with even more help in Evan Ingram and in even Pat Bryant and RJ Harvey. But here's the range that's really crazy to me. We start to get to this 100 overall. Caleb Williams is down here. We scroll a little bit more. Dak Prescott, the big one. Brock Purdy is is currently going 60 picks after, 5 rounds later than Joe Burrow. Imagine taking a much better performer in round 4 of your fantasy drafts. We're talking about like a Cortland Sutton, a Ted McMillan, a potential wide receiver 1. Take somebody like that and then just get Brock Purdy 5 rounds later, who was a top 5 quarterback when healthy down the stretch last year. Oh man, those comment sections from Bengals fans are going to be mad. Again, Joe Burrow is great in real life. He could finish as a top 5 quarterback and still not be worth it in fantasy football based on where he's going. Now in round 5, I think Zay Flowers is one of the worst picks in all of fantasy, let alone just round 5 right now. Look, he had a great sophomore season. He had 1,000 yards. He made the Pro Bowl. He flashed some legit explosiveness and upside. Heck, he even went out there and had a nice 25.7% target share, although he was not in a pass-first offense, so it doesn't really matter as much. But hey, he ranked 11th in deep targets, which is something that we like, right? Of course, we like that, but we need more added context. 11 deep targets is pretty solid, but then you scroll over and the guy only has 8 red zone targets, 59th in the NFL. That's a little bit of a concern. And the biggest concern of all is the fact that he's going to remain in, if not the most run-heavy offense, one of the most run-heavy offenses when you have Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson running it back. Ravens were dead last in pass attempts last year and top 2 in rushing attempts, rushing yards, and yards per carry. I mean, you're looking at Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, and Justin Hill, their top 3 rushers combining for over 3,000 rushing yards. So even if Flowers is going to be relatively efficient and have these big upside weeks, when you're only ranking 37th amongst all wide receivers in routes run, you're not even running 30 routes a week, just 26.6 last year, that's going to be a concern. You pull up this as well, let's look at his snap share. Zay Flowers was only on the field last year 76% of the time. That might seem high, 49th amongst wide receivers. Most teams' wide receiver 1s are on the field for 90+% of the snaps. Zay Flowers just 76%. We mentioned he only had 8 red zone targets, which is a concern. So you're looking at a guy that when his team gets to the offense, or when his offense gets to the red zone, they're just running the ball. He's not on the field all that much. And when he's on the field, he's getting targeted, sure, but they're throwing the ball 25 to 30 times a game. So it's like 5 or 6 targets. And then you could even argue that this is probably the most competition that he's seen entering like a season. You have Rashad Bateman, who's coming off of his best season in the NFL, just got an extension. You have DeAndre Hopkins, who sure, he's now 30 plus years old. He's not the same as he once was, but for him to be the wide receiver on this team ahead of some guys in the past who were the wide receiver on this team, like Nelson Aguilar, Devontae Walker, some of the other players that have been on this team, I'm not really too concerned about this. Of course, as well, then you still have the development of Isaiah Likely, who only seems to get better each year. Mark Andrews, who's still going to be out there and active in the red zone from a target share perspective. So I would argue that this is the most competition Zay Flowers has ever faced. I would argue that he's being drafted as if he's still a wide receiver 1 in terms of like how people look at him. I think he's just a cog in the machine for this offense. So where he currently goes as the wide receiver 28 in drafts, I just have to be off of him because he's going ahead of Ted McMillan. He's going next to players like, Travion Henderson, DK Metcalf, Devonta Smith. You scroll even more, there's guys like Caleb Johnson going after him, Aaron Jones. I just think at this point, you're not getting great value by selecting Zay Flowers in round 5. And there's a guy in round 6 that I could say similar things for. Let's do that right now. And this one's going to need some explaining for sure. But Chris Godwin in round 6 is somebody that I'm currently avoiding right now. And here's the thing. Back in the free agency period, we were kind of coming out and saying like, Chris Godwin's a winner right now. He re-signed with his same team. They didn't add anybody else. But then as the offseason went on, things got worse and worse for Godwin. Like, don't get me wrong. When he was actually healthy for the first half of last season, he had 19.7 fantasy points per game, which would have ranked second amongst all wide receivers. But the concern now is he's coming off of a pretty serious leg injury. We'll have more on that in a second. He's now 29 years old. And as the offseason went on, things got worse. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers ended up losing Liam Cohen, their offensive coordinator. They ended up drafting a first-round pick in Emeka Egbuka, a great wide receiver who's already killing it in practices and training camp and OTAs. Now, here's some more stuff on Chris Godwin overall. You can see here he's expected to have a slow start. Maybe he'll be 80% according to SportsMD analysis by week 1, 90% by midseason. Okay, so you're paying for a player, and this is a big no-no for me. This is what I don't like to do. When you're talking about veterans who are entering a season injured, guys like Brandon Ayuk, guys like Chris Godwin, if you're looking at this right now, Chris Godwin entering the season at 90, won't be 100% until the second half of the year at best. That's if there's no setback. That's to say if everything goes to plan. And let's not forget that it's not like this was the first injury, this dislocated ankle that he suffered. Back in 2021, he had the awful knee injury where he had a multi-ligament injury between his ACL and his MCL. He's had foot injuries since then. He had hamstring injuries in 2022. 2023 was his only healthy season, and then he ends up having his best season in 2024 to start, and that ankle dislocation. So this is a wide receiver who has a lot going on with his lower body. He has full-on ACL. We're talking ligaments. We're talking soft tissue injuries with the hamstring, and now he has this ankle dislocation, which is just kind of making things a problem here. If he's not fully healthy by week 1, it increases the chances that he can pull pull something else, a knee strain, another hamstring strain. And like I said, we still have Mike Evans. It is starting to feel like this Bucs offense might have one more ride in them when Mike Evans is 32, when Chris Godwin is approaching 30 off of these injuries, but they do have Emeka Egbuka out there, a first-round pick. Jalen McMillan's there, but I don't think that he's somebody I want to be drafting all that much either. But Egbuka's already looking fantastic. This is a guy who can play in the slot, primarily played in the slot in college, and kind of take some of those Chris Godwin reps away as soon as year one. And my biggest concern is the fact that Liam Coen is no longer here. This has been the third straight year now that they're going to have a different play caller, Dave Canales, Liam Coen, now somebody else. Sure, the past 2 years it's worked, but how often is it just going to continue to work like nothing changed? So in terms of Chris Godwin right now in round 6, like, I'm not going to come out here and say that there's a ton of better wide receivers. Like, round 6 is just not where I'm targeting wide receiver right now. Round 6, I think, is where you can probably scoop up another quarterback. Maybe you go for elite tight end if they fall here. Maybe if you get a quarterback to fall. Round 6, though, is not where I'm really targeting wide receiver, and I'm also not going to be targeting Chris Godwin. All right, let's stick with the wide receiver position and go to round 7. I would doubt that this guy is still a round 7 pick by August, but he is right now as of this recording, which is just crazy. And that would be the 49ers second-year player, Ricky Pearsall, who, if you're talking about fantasy football, the fantasy football Twitter space thinks this guy's a sleeper. I would argue that he's going to be a trap pick entering year 2. I mean, look, Pearsall is impressive. He's a first-round pick in the NFL for a reason, and the dude got shot entering his rookie year and dealt with soft tissue injuries, and he was still able to be productive. Again, outside of the injuries, which is impressive alone for a rookie to overcome that in some games, he was shot, literally shot, and he still put up 31 catches, 400 receiving yards, while competing with guys like, at least at the beginning of the year, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, the Juwan Jennings breakout, right? So it's not like he was just the guy. He had to compete with so many talented players. And at the end of the season, when Deebo Samuel was banged up and not the same, when Brandon Ayuk wasn't out there, Ricky Pearsall's final 2 games started to pop all the way off. 8 catches, 141 yards on 10 targets, a team high. The last game of the season, 6 catches, 69 yards, led the team in receiving yet again, had 8 targets, scored a touchdown as well. So this was a guy who was an absolute monster the last 2 games of the year. During that time, he had 28 fantasy points and 19 fantasy points. He was averaging over 100 yards per game. Small 2-game sample, but a nice way to end the year. So yeah, that's pretty good. It's overall nothing special when you just look at 31 catches for 400 yards, but when you add in the context that he started off with literally being shot and dealing with injuries, and he ended it with some of the best play out of anybody in the NFL at the wide receiver position, that's what really matters. Then you end up coming out here, and here's where the problem really kicks in, is that Ricky Pearsall, for the second straight offseason in OTAs and training camp, or at least OTAs and minicamp, hasn't been involved because he tweaked his hamstring and will be out until training camp. So like it says right here on Polymarket Football's site, another offseason injury for Pearsall for his early career. It is so important for these wide receivers entering their rookie and second year to get those reps with the system, with the quarterback, with the players, the coaching staff. He's now not had it for 2 straight years. Now, as of now, he's reported that he should be ready for training camp, but hamstring injuries are a tricky damn thing. And although we're not going to have Deebo Samuel here, we still have Juwan Jennings, who broke out last year. We still obviously have George Kittle. And you're trading Deebo Samuel for Christian McCaffrey, a player who has a 116 catch season on his resume. And sure, he's older now coming off injury, but as of right now, he's healthy. So these are concerns. There's still competition here. Brandon Ayuk, even if he doesn't start the season off, maybe he's back by week 4 or week 5, even if he's not 100% himself, they're going to put this guy out there. That's for damn sure. So Ricky Pearsall coming into the season hurt. Like, if Pearsall wasn't hurt right now, I'd still be like, okay, maybe he's worth a 7th, probably more so an 8th or a 9th round pick in my opinion. But the fact that he's already hurt entering training camp with a hamstring injury, I'm concerned. Now, don't get me wrong. If we get to the end of August and he's completely healthy and he's lighting up training camp, then we can start to change some of our priors. But we can't do that right now because the guy is hurt and just missed his 2nd straight off season and still has competition. Like, those rose-colored glasses, we can't put them on right now because it's not looking like that. So when I look at Ricky Pearsall and see that he's going next to Jacoby Myers in round 7, crazy. Next to Jaden Reed in round 7, crazy to me. I'd just rather have all of those guys instead, and even some of the guys that go below him in the draft. I mean, even his own quarterback across positions, and Brock Purdy that goes in like round 8, early round 9. And speaking of quarterbacks, this quarterback that goes in round 8, somehow ahead of the likes of Brock Purdy oftentimes, is just crazy to me. Let's break him down. All right, now come on down, Mr. Jared Goff. Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions, who had a great 2024 season. I mean, we're talking about this player ranking top 10 overall in everything. Passing yards with over 4,600. Completion percentage was off the chart with 72%. His passing touchdowns, 37 passing touchdowns, was top 10. He was top 10 in fantasy points per game with 19.8. All of that is is great, but the problem is some things have changed. For starters, he loses Ben Johnson, who's been the mastermind of this offense since 2022 when he was the offensive coordinator. Heck, even before that in 2021 when he was the passing game coordinator. And very quietly, this offensive line that year in and year out has been a top 10, top 5, if not top 3 unit, has lost some key pieces. Frank Ragnow, center who was PFF's #1 center last year, retires before the age of 30. They lose Kevin Zeitler, who was like a 1-year replacement for them on their offensive line. He's getting older, but he was solid for them last year as well. So now you're losing 2 out of 5 players along your offensive line. That's a concern when you have to replace 2 talented players, especially Frank Ragnow at center, and then you have to replace your offensive coordinator coach Ben Johnson, who's been great for you. These are big concerns. And then we can make the same argument that we did for Joe Burrow. Like, Jared Goff is coming off of a career season, top 8 in fantasy points per game, 37 passing touchdowns. The dude completed 72% of his passes last year, which is insane. 5% more than any other season. Career high in passing yards. Like, he's coming off of everything being a career high, and now he's losing the offensive coordinator that did that for him. He's getting maybe a worse offensive line. Like, yeah, regression is already coming, especially when you factor these things in. And like a Joe Burrow, but even worse, Jared Goff has virtually 0 value in the rushing department. Joe Burrow at least got you 11 rushing yards per game, or Jared Goff just 3 per game. 0 rushing touchdowns last year. Like, I'm not going to say the bottom's going to fall out on this offense because I believe in Dan Campbell. I believe in Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Sam Laporta to an extent. Like, this offense still looks talented. But all I'm saying is, what happens if Jared Goff, if his elite numbers from last year drop to 4,200 or 4,300 or passing yards? If the offense runs a little bit more with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, he's only throwing 30 passing touchdowns now, and he's finishing as the quarterback 14, but he's going in round 8 ahead of Brock Purdy, ahead of Caleb Williams, ahead of J.J. McCarthy and Drake May, and guys who have legit rushing upside and a ceiling in terms of passing like a Dak Prescott. It's also worth mentioning that regression is coming either way, even if Ben Johnson was still there, because Jared Goff, based on his situation last year, was only expected to score 16.5 fantasy points per game. So his expected fantasy points per game was to be the quarterback 21, which means that he was way more efficient than he should have been. And a big reason why you're way more efficient than you should have been is because you probably had a top 3 play caller in the league next to you and all these talented players around you. But how much can that efficiency really continue to hold up? 21st overall was what he was supposed to finish as, and he finished as a number 7 overall player. Even if this regresses to average and he's the quarterback 14, that is a wasted pick in round 8 because you can get a quarterback 14 in like round 12 to 13 to 14 of your draft. Like, let's just look up right now ADP of quarterbacks. Jared Goff goes as the quarterback 10. Almost every single, if not every single quarterback who goes after him, I'd rather have. Caleb Williams for sure, even though they go right next to each other. 12 picks later, give me Dak Prescott. 15 picks later, Justin Herbert's a maybe. But after that, you're talking 20 picks later, Brock Purdy. 20 picks later, Justin Fields. We could scroll even more. Almost 30 picks later, you're getting guys like Drake May, J.J. McCarthy. I'll take those guys all year long, I was going to say, but every single day of the week, especially twice on Sundays when I have to start them. And by the way, all these best and worst values are updated in the blueprint at jointheblueprint.com. They're updated all off season long. So sometimes if a player falls enough, they actually become a decent value instead of a bad value. That doesn't happen often, but sometimes it does. And that's just another way to reinforce that that is what this is. We're looking at these players compared to average draft position. We're not saying that they're bad players. Jared Goff is a talented quarterback. He's in the NFL for a reason, but we're saying compared to his peers, his other players at that position that go later on, yeah, you could just get them instead for a cheaper price point. Why pay more for the same product? All right, now we get to round 9, and I'm really, this one hurts. It's crazy to say this, but I don't believe that Cooper Kupp is anymore a safe pick in fantasy football. That seems pretty obvious, but it also means even in round 9, he's somebody that I don't want to be touching. Now, don't get me wrong. You look at Cooper Kupp last year, he put up respectable numbers. Cooper Kupp, despite being 30 plus years old, was still a top 20 fantasy receiver, 14.6 fantasy points per game. He had 6 receiving touchdowns yet again, which is something that he just continues to do every year, is score like 5, 6 plus touchdowns. And then the problem is, though, like, sure, he started off the season a little bit banged up. He got a couple of games out there when Puka Nacua wasn't healthy yet, but at the end of the season, when they were both out there, those final 5 games of the year, that's when things fell apart for Cooper Kupp, and this has kind of been the case the last 3 years for Cooper Kupp, is that he just can't stay healthy towards the end of the year. His final 8 games, just 6.8 fantasy points per game and 32 receiving yards per game, compared to 20 fantasy points per game those other first 7 games and 78 receiving yards per game, more than double his final 5. So he just fell apart at the end of the season. The Rams saw enough. They didn't re-sign him. Seattle ends up signing him to put him next to Jackson Smith-Njigba to probably be the top 2 wide receivers on this team. team, but that doesn't give me a lot of hope because he's now 32 years old going to a new team. He no longer has Sean McVay. He no longer has Matthew Stafford. He's going to the Seahawks, who have a brand new quarterback themselves in Sam Darnold and a brand new play caller themselves. Like literally, this is the quarterback room. Drew Lock and Sam Darnold. Not only has everything changed for Cooper Kupp and he's getting older, coming off of more injuries, like the problem is everything has changed also for Seattle. Their quarterback with Sam Darnold here, their offensive coordinator, probably the way that they run this offense. And then you come in here, there's no more DK Metcalf, no more Tyler Lockett. It's JSN, who's been primarily a slot wide receiver his entire college and most of his NFL career, including last year. He's now going to have to go play the outside when Cooper Kupp takes over the slot as a 32-year-old wide receiver. It's just tougher for a 32-year-old wide receiver for Cooper Kupp to get separation. We didn't see it at the end of last year, so he's probably going to get put in the slot, which forces JSN to the outside where he was not nearly as efficient last year. So now you're talking about a brand new quarterback, brand new offense, and it's going to take some time to really gel together. That's not great. Like we could just talk about Cooper Kupp and remember 5 years ago when he was putting up some of the best, if not the best wide receiver ever in fantasy, but he's no longer the first read in his offense. He's no longer the red zone guy in his offense, and he's coming off of another season where he missed even more time of 5+ games. And that's just been the trend in his career right now. Like, let's look at this. Back-to-back seasons, he's missed at least 5 games. The year before that, he ended up going out there and missing 8 games. So this is a concern for Cooper Kupp. You're basically signing up for a guy who's now even older that's going into a new offense with everything changing, and you're probably signing up for him to miss minimum 3 games, maybe even upside of 6+ games. It hurts to say this, but Cooper Kupp is no longer worth it at where he currently goes. I'd rather have Khalil Shakir. If you're talking about guys who go around him, just give me a different position in like either Jaylen Warren or Brian Robinson. I'd rather even have across different positions at this point. In round 8 is where I usually start to target a tight end if I don't already have one. Otherwise, there's some decent running backs there. Otherwise, there's also some decent wide receivers who fall sometimes, probably not now at this point, but like a Calvin Ridley would fall to that round. Josh Downs is in that round of the draft. I'd rather just go there instead. All right, now for round 10, and admittedly, this player is falling, so by the time you watch this, he might be around 11 or heck, maybe even around 12 pick, but I do think that'll start to rebound come training camp. Luther Burton was a second-round pick for the Chicago Bears, had a lot of hype coming into the draft process, but based on where he kind of landed, it was tough for him, right? Because this is a highly talented wide receiver. He was arguably going to be a first-round pick, especially what he did 2 years ago in college, but then he came out last year in college, and for many different reasons, and maybe no reason at all at the same time, he went from putting up over 1,200 yards and people saying this is a top 10 pick in the NFL draft to putting up nearly half the yards with 676 in just 1 fewer games, right? So he wasn't the same player by any means, but the Bears ended up going out there and they said, you know what? This is still a talented player, somebody we could use. Ben Johnson basically hand-selected him for his new offense in Chicago. That was very fast. I just talked very fast. Did you keep up with that? Hopefully the 2x speed people, hat tip to you guys. But now he's on the Bears in Chicago, and that's not the best landing spot. Because you probably already know this, but Rome Odunze and DJ Moore reside on the Chicago Bears. And not only that, but also Colston Loveland, a top 10 pick, Cole Kmet, a decent veteran tight end. They're also going to be there taking target competition away from one Luther Burton. Okay, so maybe Luther Burton is the wide receiver 3 on this team. Maybe you think he should be able to force some opportunities because he's that talented, but like a Ricky Pearsall, Luther Burton is already banged up and injured. And Ben Johnson kind of spoke to the media earlier in training camp and minicamp and was basically just saying about how he's been frustrated by Luther Burton's unavailability at OTAs, rookie OTAs, and minicamp because he's also dealing with, I believe, a hamstring injury. That's going to keep him out until training camp. So at best, this rookie who has now no reps with the Bears at this point, and all those other guys are getting reps in the Ben Johnson offense, right? Rome Odunze is getting reps and getting praised. DJ Moore is not getting praised. It seems like the team's frustrated with him, but he's getting more reps in the Ben Johnson offense, and it's going to be better than last year. So maybe that'll kind of help out kind of some of his antics that are going on. But the other rookie in Colston Loveland, he's getting reps in this offense, right? The guy who's not getting reps in this offense right now, not getting any reps at all, is one Luther Burton at this point. And hopefully, like a Ricky Pearsall, the time training camp starts, he'll be healthy. He'll have a full training camp. He'll get out there in the preseason games. He'll look awesome, and we can start rising him back up the rankings to where a 10th round pick, I would say, is still too high, but at least you can talk me into it. But as of right now, given the competition, given the fact that he's already set back so far, like when he comes back in August, he already missed out on 2 to 3 months of practices and reps. That's just so hard to make up for in your rookie season when you don't have NFL experience, that at this point in the draft, just give me the other guys who go around him. In round 10 or 11, why would you not take Austin Eckler? In round 10 or 11, Jaden Higgins, every single time I'm taking over Luther Burton, I don't even care if Luther Burton is healthy, Jaden Higgins is going to be a top 2 wide receiver on his team, opposite Nico Collins, who will take away all the defensive attention, meaning Jaden Higgins gets more one-on-ones for him and CJ Stroud to work with. So there you go. Those are 10 rounds and 10 players who could potentially tank your drafts, and I believe are the worst picks in each round. But if you want to see who the best running backs are in every single round of the draft, and if you could just land a couple of these guys that set you so far ahead of your league mates, well, you can check out this video right here. And just a reminder, it's completely free. The top 50 overall rankings is linked down below, or you can head to fantasyrankings.com powerrankingsfree.com. That will help you with the most important rounds of your drafts, rounds 4 through 5.